In the late 11th century, Europe was a continent restless and divided, bound together loosely by faith but fractured by violence, poverty, and ambition. Kings ruled fragile realms, nobles fought private wars, and peasants lived under constant uncertainty. Beyond Europe's eastern horizon, the Byzantine Empire, once the heir of Rome, was weakening under relentless pressure. And farther still, the Islamic world controlled the most sacred city in Christianity, Jerusalem. Out of this volatile mix of religion, politics, fear, and opportunity emerged one of the most consequential movements in medieval history, the First Crusade. It was not a single event, nor a simple religious expedition. It was a collision of worlds that reshaped Europe, the Middle East, and the relationship between Christianity and Islam for centuries to come. The roots of the First Crusade lay in long-term changes that had been unfolding for generations. By the 11th century, Western Europe was experiencing a slow but significant transformation. Agricultural improvements increased food production, population growth intensified competition for land, and a new class of armed knights emerged, men trained for war, but with few legitimate outlets for their violence. The Church struggled to control this warrior culture. Efforts such as the Peace of God and Truce of God attempted to limit violence against civilians and clergy, but enforcement was weak. Many knights lived by the sword, seeking glory, land, and wealth wherever they could find it. At the same time, Christianity was becoming more centralized and assertive. The papacy, particularly under reformist popes, sought to expand its authority over secular rulers. Rome wanted not only spiritual leadership, but political influence across Christendom. Meanwhile, far to the east, the Byzantine Empire faced an existential threat. Once powerful and wealthy, Byzantium had lost much of Anatolia to Turkish Muslim forces after the Tinditimchuna forces after the Kiamparatumna, but to the forces after the Tikansensemfa catastrophic Battle of Manzikert in 1071. The Seljuk Turks now controlled territories that had been Roman for centuries, cutting into the empire's manpower and tax base. Byzantine Emperor Alexios I Komnenos was desperate. His army was weakened, his borders unstable, and his capital, Constantinople, vulnerable. In an unprecedented move, he turned to Western Europe for help. Alexios did not ask for a holy war. He requested mercenaries, disciplined soldiers to help reclaim lost lands. But his plea would ignite something far larger than he imagined. In November 1095, Pope Urban II addressed a massive crowd at the Council of Clermont in modern-day France. What he said there would echo through history. Urban spoke of Christian suffering in the East. He described churches desecrated, pilgrims attacked, and fellow Christians oppressed under Muslim rule. He framed the conflict as a sacred duty, a defense of Christendom itself. Then he issued a call unlike any before it. Christians, he declared, should take up arms, march east, and liberate Jerusalem. Those who joined would receive an extraordinary reward, the remission of sins. Violence, usually condemned by the Church, was now sanctified if committed in God's name. The response was explosive. Crowds reportedly shouted, "Deus vult, God wills it." Across Europe, men and women felt summoned by divine command. For some, it was faith. For others, adventure, wealth, or escape from hardship. Many were driven by all of these at once. The First Crusade had begun. What followed was not a single army, but a chaotic movement of people from every level of medieval society. Nobles gathered knights and retainers. Peasants abandoned farms. Priests preached along roadsides. Entire families set out toward an unknown horizon. One of the earliest and most infamous movements was the so-called People's Crusade. Led by charismatic figures like Peter the Hermit, Thousands of poorly armed peasants marched east before the main armies were even ready. This was not a disciplined force. It was a mass migration fueled by religious zeal and desperation. As they passed through Europe, violence erupted. Jewish communities along the Rhine were attacked and massacred by crusaders, who saw them as enemies of Christ. These pogroms were not ordered by the church, but they revealed the dark undercurrents of fanaticism unleashed by the crusading call. When the People's Crusade finally reached Anatolia, it was swiftly annihilated by Turkish forces. Most were killed or enslaved. Very few returned home. The main crusading armies were far more formidable. They were led by powerful nobles such as Godfrey of Bouillon, Raymond of Toulouse, Bohemond of Taranto, and Robert of Normandy. These men commanded trained knights, infantry, and resources. Though united by faith, they were also rivals, each with his own ambitions. By 1097, these armies reached Constantinople. The meeting between Crusaders and Byzantines was tense and uneasy. Cultural differences were stark. Western Crusaders viewed Byzantines as soft, deceitful, and overly sophisticated. Byzantines saw the Crusaders as violent, uncivilized barbarians. Emperor Alexios demanded oaths of loyalty, insisting that any reconquered lands once belonging to Byzantium be returned to imperial control. Reluctantly, the Crusader leaders agreed. Together, they marched into Anatolia. The first major test came at the city of Nicaea, held by the Seljuk Turks. After a coordinated siege, the city fell in 1097, but Alexios negotiated its surrender directly, excluding the Crusaders from looting. This bred resentment and suspicion that would haunt the alliance. As the Crusaders advanced deeper into Anatolia, they faced extreme hardship. Summer heat, lack of water, unfamiliar terrain, and constant harassment by Turkish cavalry took a deadly toll. Thousands died from thirst and disease. Yet against the odds, the Crusaders adapted. They learned to counter Turkish hit-and-run tactics, relying on discipline and heavy cavalry charges. At the Battle of Dorylaeum, they secured a critical victory that opened the road eastward. By late 1097, the Crusaders reached Antioch, one of the greatest cities of the eastern Mediterranean. Antioch was massive, heavily fortified, and strategically vital. Its walls stretched for miles, protected by towers and mountainous terrain. Taking it would require endurance, cooperation, and luck. The siege of Antioch lasted over 7 months. Food ran out. Horses were eaten. Desertion increased. Morale collapsed. At times, Crusaders resorted to scavenging and even cannibalism to survive. Inside the city, the defenders held firm. Outside, Muslim relief armies gathered. Finally, through betrayal, the Crusaders gained entry. A guard was bribed, a tower opened, and in June 1098, Antioch fell. What followed was a massacre. Muslim and Jewish inhabitants were slaughtered. The city was looted. But victory quickly turned to crisis. A massive Muslim army arrived and besieged the Crusaders inside Antioch. The hunters had become the trapped. Starvation returned. Despair spread. Some leaders fled. Others spoke of divine abandonment. Then came a vision. A peasant claimed to have discovered the Holy Lance, the Chinsum, spear that pierced Christ's side. Whether real or fabricated, its discovery transformed morale. The Crusaders believed God had intervened. In a desperate gamble, they marched out to face the besieging army. Against all expectations, they won. This victory cemented the belief that the crusade was divinely favored. Antioch became the first of several Crusader states, though disputes over its control revealed deep divisions among the leaders. The road to Jerusalem was open. The Roman command structure at Adrianople, was already strained before the battle even began. Emperor Valens, ruling the Eastern Roman Empire, faced immense pressure. Reports had reached him that the Gothic forces were larger and better organized than expected. His scouts delivered conflicting intelligence. Some claimed the Goths numbered fewer than 10,000. Others warned of a much larger host, including cavalry that had temporarily left the main camp. Valens chose to believe the optimistic reports. Pride played a role. Valens knew that his nephew, Emperor Gratian of the Western Roman Empire, was marching east with reinforcements. Valens feared that if he waited, the credit for victory would go to Gratian. A decisive Roman victory at Adrianople would secure Valens' reputation as a strong and independent ruler. This decision would prove fatal. On the morning of August 9, 378 AD, the Roman army marched under the burning summer sun toward the Gothic wagon lager near Adrianople. The soldiers were exhausted before the battle even began. Many had marched without sufficient water. Their armor weighed heavily in the heat. Discipline was strained, morale uncertain. Across the field stood the Goths, led by Fritigern. Their camp was formed by a massive circle of wagons, a mobile fortress protecting women, children, and supplies. Smoke rose into the air as Fritigern ordered fires lit, deliberately slowing Roman movement and obscuring visibility. This was not the behavior of a desperate barbarian. It was calculated psychological warfare. Negotiations briefly resumed. Fritigern sent envoys requesting peace talks, likely to buy time. He knew his cavalry had not yet returned. Valens, impatient and confident, allowed negotiations to drag on but kept his army in battle formation. Then chaos erupted. Some Roman units, without orders, launched an attack on the Gothic camp. Whether this was a misunderstanding or sheer impatience remains debated, but once the attack began, control was lost. Roman lines advanced unevenly. Cohesion broke down. Orders became impossible to relay. At that moment, the Gothic cavalry returned. Thousands of heavily armed Gothic horsemen charged into the Roman flanks. This was the decisive blow. Roman infantry, tightly packed and already exhausted, could not maneuver. Their formations collapsed under the impact. Soldiers were cut down where they stood. Panic spread faster than any command could restore order. The Roman army, once the most disciplined fighting force in the world, disintegrated. Valens attempted to rally his troops, but the battlefield had become a killing ground. Surrounded by dust, smoke, and screaming men, command was impossible. Roman units fought bravely in isolated pockets, but bravery without coordination meant nothing. The Goths pressed the attack relentlessly. Infantry surged forward from the wagon circle, while cavalry encircled the Roman forces. It was slaughter. Either way, the consequences were profound. Within decades, similar arrangements would spread across the Western Roman Empire. Germanic kingdoms would emerge on Roman soil. Imperial authority would fade. The structures of Roman administration would collapse, replaced by a patchwork of successor states. The Battle of Adrianople did not destroy Rome overnight, but it changed Rome forever. It exposed the limits of Roman power. It shattered the myth of invincibility. It proved that the empire could be defeated not by chaos, but by adaptation. In hindsight, Adrianople stands as a warning written in blood. Empires do not fall only because of enemies at the gate. They fall because they fail to adapt without losing control, because pride overrides caution, and because short-term solutions create long-term fractures. Rome survived Adrianople, but after Adrianople, Rome was never the same. Either way, the consequences were profound. Within decades, similar arrangements would spread across the Western Roman Empire. Germanic kingdoms would emerge on Roman soil. Imperial authority would fade. The structures of Roman administration would collapse, replaced by a patchwork of successor states. The Battle of Adrianople did not destroy Rome overnight, but it changed Rome forever. It exposed the limits of Roman power. It shattered the myth of invincibility. It proved that the empire could be defeated not by chaos, but by adaptation. In hindsight, Adrianople stands as a warning written in blood. Empires do not fall only because of enemies at the gate. They fall because they fail to adapt without losing control, because pride overrides caution, and because short-term solutions create long-term fractures. Rome survived Adrianople. But after Adrianople, Rome was never the same.